The elevator doors opened on the 60th floor. She couldn't know what she was about to witness. He couldn't know his life was about to end. 2 words would destroy everything, but 5 words would save them both. A sick child was counting on him. A broken woman was testing him. When their worlds collided in that sterile office, everything they believed about love, about power, about what really matters, shattered. What happened next changed everything. That moment I just described, it really happened. And if you're someone who still believes that one act of kindness can change a life, that love really can conquer the coldest heart, then you're exactly where you belong. There's a subscribe button nearby, and honestly, I'd be honored if you join our family of dreamers and believers, because what you're about to hear will restore your faith in humanity. Victoria Langston stood 60 floors above Manhattan, watching the world move like ants below. At 38, she'd built an empire: hotels, restaurants, real estate. Her name whispered in boardrooms with equal parts admiration and fear. But Victoria had a problem money couldn't solve: trust. Everyone wanted something. Employees smiled while plotting betrayal. Business partners shook hands while planning exits. So Victoria devised a test. Brutal, perhaps, but effective. You're fired. 2 words that revealed true character. She'd watch them beg, watch them rage, watch them crumble. She'd tested 17 people so far. 17 predictable reactions. The marketing assistant who burst into tears. The veteran manager who threatened lawsuits. The ambitious coordinator dropping names like lifelines. Each response confirmed Victoria's darkest belief. When push came to shove, people showed their true colors. Employee number 18 was about to shatter that belief forever. What would you do if your boss called you in and said those 2 words? Keep that thought, because this man's response will surprise you in ways you can't imagine. Ethan Parker knocked on Victoria's office door that Tuesday morning, completely unaware he was walking into a trap. In 3 years of working the early morning prep shift, he'd never even seen the CEO. He was nervous, sure, but worry was a luxury Ethan couldn't afford. At 32, every ounce of energy went toward one thing: making sure his 6-year-old daughter Lila had everything she needed. Victoria studied him as he entered. Average height, brown hair that needed cutting, uniform pressed but worn. But his eyes held something she rarely saw anymore: genuine warmth. "Mr. Parker," she began, voice crisp as autumn air. "I'll get straight to the point. You're fired. Effective immediately." Victoria leaned back, arms crossed, ready to catalog his breakdown. Would he beg? Argue? Threaten? But Ethan didn't break down. He blinked once, face going pale, but he didn't cry, didn't shout, didn't even ask why. Instead, he did something that stopped Victoria's heart cold. "I understand," he said quietly, voice steady despite the devastation in his eyes. "Could I ask for one thing? Could I work my shift today? Just today. I need the money for my daughter's medication." Something cracked inside Victoria's chest. In all her years, through all her tests, no one had ever responded with such dignity, such quiet strength. He wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking about his child. "Your daughter." The words escaped before Victoria could stop them. "Lila. She's 6. She has asthma, and her prescription runs out tomorrow. I just need to work today so I can afford the refill." Ethan's voice never wavered, though Victoria caught the slight tremor in his hands. "After that, I'll be gone. You have my word." Victoria realized she wasn't looking at an employee anymore. She was looking at a father. "Tell me about her," Victoria heard herself saying. Something shifted in Ethan's face. Despite everything, the firing, the fear, the uncertainty, his eyes lit up. "She's everything good in this world. Smart as a whip, curious about everything. She wants to be a veterinarian because she says animals can't tell doctors what's wrong. So vets have to be extra caring. When was the last time someone had spoken about another person with such pure, uncomplicated love? Victoria couldn't remember. Maybe never. How long have you been raising her alone? 2 years. My wife Sarah died in a car accident when Lila was 4. Ethan's voice caught briefly before steadying. Lila doesn't remember much about her mom being gone, but she remembers the love. I make sure of that. Victoria's breath caught. She knew about loss, but hers had been different. Her parents' death had freed her from their cold expectations. But this man had lost his partner and doubled down on protecting what remained. Mr. Parker. Victoria started, then stopped. She was supposed to reveal the test now. Tell him it was fake. Watch his relief. But something held her back. Maybe it was his dignity. Maybe it was the love in his voice. Maybe it was realizing she just witnessed something rare. A genuinely good person. Work your shift, she said finally. We'll talk tomorrow. Ethan's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. I know you don't owe me anything. He stood to leave, then paused. Ms. Langston, I hope I didn't disappoint you in my work. I really did try my best. After he left, Victoria sat for an hour, staring out at the city. For the first time in her adult life, she felt ashamed. She'd been testing people's character while revealing her own. The comparison wasn't flattering. But what happened next would change everything she thought she knew about strength, about family, about love. That evening, Victoria did something unprecedented. She drove to Ethan's neighborhood, a working-class area in Queens where small apartments housed big dreams. She found them in a playground 3 blocks from their building. Even from her car, Victoria could see the joy radiating from the scene. Ethan pushing Lila on a swing, her delighted squeals carrying across the evening air. When Lila jumped off mid-swing, he scooped her up and spun her around, both laughing like they had no cares in the world. Victoria watched them walk home hand in hand, Lila chattering excitedly about something that made Ethan smile, as if her words were made of gold. This was what she'd been missing. This was what all her wealth couldn't buy. Connection. Purpose beyond herself. Love that asked for nothing in return. Victoria drove home to her penthouse with its perfect furniture and perfect view. For the first time in years, she felt lonely. The next morning brought a crisis that would test everything Victoria thought she knew about herself. At 2:47 a.m., her phone shattered the silence. The night manager, panicked and apologetic. Ms. Langston, I'm sorry to wake you, but we have a situation. Ethan Parker is here with his daughter. She's sick, really sick. His babysitter canceled. He can't miss his shift, and she needs a hospital. Victoria was reaching for clothes before he finished speaking. Is the child okay? She's struggling to breathe. Her asthma, but it looks bad. He's trying to work while caring for her, but she needs help now. Victoria was in her car within 5 minutes, heart pounding with urgency she didn't understand. She'd never rushed anywhere for an employee before, certainly never for an employee's child. But as she drove through empty streets, Victoria realized this had stopped being about employment the moment Ethan asked to work one more shift for his daughter's medicine. She found them in the restaurant's break room. Lila curled in her father's lap, breathing shallow and labored. Ethan still in uniform, holding her with one arm while trying to prep vegetables with the other, face tight with worry. Mr. Parker. Ethan looked up, startled. Ms. Langston. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought her. But, stop. Get her coat. We're going to the hospital. I can't afford. You're not paying. I am. Now move. Have you ever watched someone love their child so completely it changes your understanding of what strength really means? That's what happened to Victoria during that drive to Mount Sinai. The drive was quiet except for Lila's labored breathing and Ethan's soft reassurances. Victoria found herself glancing in the rearview mirror at this little girl who had somehow become central to her world. Lila was beautiful the way sick children often are. Pale but luminous, fragile but fighting. dark hair like her father's, but startling green eyes that seemed too old for 6 years. "Daddy," she whispered during one difficult breath, "did I get you in trouble at work?" Victoria's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "No, sweetheart," Ethan murmured, stroking her hair. "You could never get me in trouble. You're my good luck charm, remember? Even when I'm sick? Especially when you're sick, because that's when you need extra love." Victoria had to pull over, not because of traffic, but because something was happening to her chest that made breathing difficult. She sat outside a 24-hour diner, listening to a father love his daughter, and felt her carefully constructed world crumbling. This was what she'd been testing for. Not groveling or anger. This quiet, powerful love that transformed fear into tenderness. At the hospital, Victoria watched Ethan navigate emergency care with practiced efficiency. This wasn't their first late-night medical crisis. While they waited, Lila curled across plastic chairs, breathing easier but still concerning. Ethan sat on the floor beside her, one hand on her back, the other holding a work schedule he was trying to figure out. "How many shifts do you work?" Victoria asked quietly. "Right now? For jobs. Morning prep at your restaurant, lunch shift at a midtown diner, evening catering, weekend banquets." Ethan didn't look up. "It sounds like a lot, but the timing works most days." "When do you sleep?" "When Lila sleeps, when she's at school. Sometimes during breaks if I can find a quiet spot." He smiled tiredly. "You do what you have to do. For jobs. For jobs to keep one small girl safe and loved." While Victoria complained about board meetings, this man worked 18-hour days with a smile, never complaining, never asking for help. "Why didn't you tell me yesterday? About the jobs. About how desperately you need the work." Ethan finally looked up. Would it have mattered? The question hit Victoria like a physical blow. Would it have mattered? In her old world, probably not. She'd have seen it as manipulation. But now? "It would have mattered," she said quietly. A doctor appeared before Ethan could respond. Lila's breathing had stabilized, but she needed a new rescue inhaler and stronger preventive medication. Cost: nearly $300. Victoria watched Ethan's face as the doctor explained. She saw him calculating which bills could wait, which shifts he'd need to pick up, how many meals he could skip. "I'll take care of it," Victoria said. "Ms. Langston, I can't." "You can and you will." Victoria's voice carried authority. She'd used to close billion-dollar deals. But underneath was something softer. "Consider it a company health benefit." Ethan stared at her. "I don't understand what's happening here." Victoria wasn't sure she understood either. Yesterday morning, she'd been a different person. Colder. More certain about how the world worked. "Sometimes good people deserve good things," she said finally. "Sometimes that's enough. If you've ever had someone show you what real love looks like, you know it changes everything about how you see the world." That's what happened to Victoria as they waited for Lila's prescription. For the first time, she and Ethan really talked. Not CEO to employee, but human to human. He told her about Sarah. How they'd met in college, dreamed of opening their own restaurant. How Sarah had been the dreamer, he'd been the practical one. How after she died, he'd had to become both for Lila's sake. "She left me a letter," Ethan said, watching Lila sleep peacefully. "Sarah. She wrote it when Lila was born, made me promise to read it if anything happened to her. She wanted me to make sure Lila knew she was loved, not just missed." "What did it say?" Ethan's smile was soft as morning light. "That love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up every day, even when everything's falling apart. That Lila would need someone who loved her enough to keep going when going felt impossible." Victoria felt tears threatening for the first time in years. "She sounds amazing." She was. And she'd love seeing Lila now. She's got Sarah's curiosity and kindness, but she's tougher than either of us ever were. She's had to be. As they drove home in early morning light, Lila asleep in the back seat and Ethan dozing beside her, Victoria made a decision that would change all their lives. But first, she had to survive what happened next. The photograph appeared on the New York Post's front page 3 days later. Victoria Langston, billionaire CEO, carrying a small child into Mount Sinai emergency room while a man in restaurant uniform hurried beside her. The headline, Secret Family? Langston's late-night hospital run sparks questions. Victoria stared at the newspaper, phone ringing incessantly with calls from board members, investors, reporters. Financial news networks were speculating everything from secret adoption to hidden marriage. Her assistant entered without permission. Emergency board meeting in an hour. They want answers. Victoria knew what they wanted. Distance from Ethan and Lila immediately. A public statement clarifying no personal relationship. The old Victoria, cold, calculated, putting image above decency. But the old Victoria had never sat in a hospital watching a father love his daughter with such pure devotion it changed her understanding of strength. The board meeting was brutal. 12 of New York's most powerful business leaders, all demanding explanations for Victoria's reckless behavior. The solution is simple, Harold Greystone announced. Terminate Parker immediately. Issue a statement clarifying you were fulfilling corporate responsibility. Victoria listened to them dissect Ethan's character as if he were a liability rather than a human being who'd shown her what goodness looked like. He has a sick child, Victoria said quietly. Unfortunate but not our concern, Janet Morrison replied. Our concern is protecting your reputation and our investments. What about protecting good people? The room went silent. His name is Ethan. His daughter's name is Lila. She's 6, wants to be a veterinarian, and almost couldn't breathe because her father couldn't afford medication on what we pay him. Victoria stood, pacing to windows that once made her feel powerful. We're paying a good man poverty wages while he works 4 jobs. We're so worried about image that we're willing to destroy someone who showed me more integrity in 5 minutes than I've seen in this boardroom in 5 years. What exactly are you proposing? Harold asked. Victoria turned back, feeling completely clear. I'm promoting him. Ethan Parker will be our new director of restaurant operations. 5 times his current salary, full benefits, executive privileges. The explosion was immediate. Reckless. Impossible. Corporate suicide. Victoria waited for the noise to die. If anyone has a problem rewarding excellence, integrity, and dedication, you're welcome to sell your shares. The meeting ended with threats and warnings, but Victoria listened with something approaching peace. And what Victoria did next shocked everyone, including herself. The next morning, Victoria called Ethan into her office for the second time. He entered nervously, probably expecting the worst given the media storm. Ethan, please sit. He perched on the chair's edge. If this is about the newspaper, it's about a job offer. Victoria explained the promotion, salary, responsibilities. She watched his face cycle through confusion, disbelief, suspicion, and finally, cautious hope. Why? He asked when she finished. Such a simple question requiring the most complex answer Victoria had ever given. Because 3 days ago you showed me what real strength looks like. You faced devastating news and your first thought wasn't about yourself. It was about taking care of your daughter. You didn't beg or threaten. You just asked for one more day of work to buy her medicine. Victoria paused, realizing she was about to say things she'd never said aloud. I've spent my life testing people, judging them, waiting for disappointment. They always delivered. But you reminded me there are still good people. People who work 4 jobs without complaining. People who love their children more than their pride. People who show dignity when the world shows them none. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. You think I can do this job? You've been doing this job for 3 years, just without the title or pay you deserve. You know every employee. You understand customer service better than any MBA we could hire. And you have something that can't be taught. You care about doing things right. What about the board? The newspapers? Victoria smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Let me worry about the board. As for the newspapers, the truth is better than any story they could make up. Ethan accepted with the same quiet dignity that had started this transformation. That evening, Victoria knocked on a queen's apartment door, carrying takeout from the city's most expensive restaurant and a gift she hoped would bring joy. Lila answered, breathing clear thanks to new medication. You're the lady who helped Daddy at the hospital. That's right. Is your daddy home? Daddy, Lila called. The nice lady from the hospital is here. Ethan appeared, radiating genuine happiness. The gift was a beginner's veterinarian kit, stuffed animals that got sick, and medical tools to heal them. Lila's squeal of delight was worth more to Victoria than any board approval. Over dinner, eaten sitting on the living room floor because the kitchen table wasn't big enough for three, Victoria learned what family felt like. She learned Lila could recite scientific names of 17 animals, that Ethan could make his daughter laugh with silly voices for her stuffed patients, that love could exist in a space no bigger than a studio apartment, that happiness didn't require penthouse views. Most importantly, she learned she'd been hungry her entire life without realizing it. Not for food, but for connection. Why are you really here? Ethan asked after Lila fell asleep surrounded by veterinary supplies. Victoria looked around the apartment. Photos of Sarah everywhere. Lila's drawings covering the refrigerator. Evidence of life built around love rather than achievement. And realized she'd been asking herself the same question. Because for the first time in my adult life, I'm somewhere that feels like home, she said quietly. And if you're wondering whether love stories like this really happen in real life, stay with me. Because what happened over the next few months will restore your faith in happy endings. The transformation was remarkable. Ethan threw himself into his new role with dedication he'd shown in the kitchen. But now his ideas were heard, implemented, celebrated. He reorganized training programs, improved employee benefits, created customer feedback systems that increased satisfaction across all properties. More importantly, he did it with the kindness that had first caught Victoria's attention. He remembered birthdays, asked about families, created workplace culture that turned jobs into careers. Victoria found herself leaving the office earlier, spending time in restaurants, watching Ethan work. She told herself it was executive oversight, but she knew the truth. She was fascinated by his ability to lead through service rather than intimidation. And Lila? Lila bloomed. With her father's new salary and flexible schedule, she no longer worried about medication or whether Daddy would be too tired to play. She started dance classes and art lessons, her curiosity finding new outlets every week. But the most significant change happened on a Saturday evening in November when Victoria was working late and received an unexpected visitor. Daddy sent me to ask if you want dinner tomorrow, Lila announced from Victoria's doorway, holding Ethan's hand and wearing a serious expression. He made soup and says you probably don't eat enough vegetables. Victoria looked past Lila to Ethan, clearly embarrassed. Lila, we talked about this, he said gently. Ms. Langston is very busy. Actually, Victoria interrupted. Dinner sounds perfect. What kind of soup? That's how Sunday dinners became tradition. Every week, Victoria climbed 4 flights to a small queen's apartment and remembered what it felt like to be human. She watched Ethan teach Lila to cook, patiently guiding small hands. She listened to detailed school reports and stories about injured pigeons Lila rescued. She learned to play board games, help with homework, tuck a little girl into bed with stories about brave veterinarians. Most importantly, she learned to open her heart again. The change didn't go unnoticed. Business associates commented on Victoria's softer negotiating style, increased focus on employee welfare, tendency to ask about families. Some worried she was losing her edge. Others wondered if success had made her soft. Victoria didn't care. For the first time, she was measuring success not by profit margins but by how many people smiled when they saw her coming. But life had one more test in store. The crisis came on a snowy Tuesday in February. Victoria was mid-conference call when her assistant burst in, face pale. "There's been an accident. PS 142. School bus skidded on ice, hit a tree. Children injured. They're asking all parents to come to Mount Sinai immediately." Victoria's blood turned to ice. PS 142. Lila's school. She was out of her office and in her car before her assistant finished explaining the hospital wasn't releasing names over the phone. The drive was the longest 20 minutes of Victoria's life. She found herself praying, making bargains, promising changes she'd already made. The hospital was chaos. Parents crying, children on stretchers, medical staff running with grim efficiency. Victoria pushed through crowds, searching for familiar faces. She found Ethan in the pediatric waiting area, holding a hospital bracelet and staring at nothing. "Is she?" Victoria couldn't finish. "Concussion. Broken wrist. Keeping her overnight for observation, but she's going to be okay." Ethan's voice was flat. She was awake when paramedics arrived. Kept asking if everyone else was okay. Victoria sank beside him, relief making her legs weak. "Can we see her?" "Not yet. Still running tests." Ethan finally looked at her. "You came." Not a question, but it deserved an answer. "Of course I came. She's..." Victoria paused. "She's family." That night, sitting beside Lila's hospital bed, watching her sleep despite the cast and bandage, Victoria understood something fundamental about love. It wasn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about showing up. About caring so much about another person's well-being that their pain became your pain. Their fear became your fear. Their relief became your relief. It was about becoming part of something bigger than yourself. "Victoria." Lila's sleepy voice interrupted her thoughts. "Are you going to stay?" "If you want me to, sweetheart." "Ido." "Daddy gets scared when I'm hurt, and you make him less scared." Victoria looked across the bed at Ethan, who was watching his daughter with protective intensity. But this time, Victoria was part of it. Part of the worry, part of the relief, part of the family. "Then I'll stay," she promised. Spring brought changes none of them had anticipated. Victoria announced her engagement to Ethan on a quiet Sunday evening in May, sitting in their apartment, because sometime over winter, it had become their apartment, while Lila drew pictures of the three of them as a family. The proposal itself had been anything but traditional. No expensive restaurant, no elaborate planning. Instead, it happened during Sunday dinner when Lila matter-of-factly asked when Victoria was going to marry Daddy so they could be a real family. "We are a real family," Ethan had said. "But if Victoria married you, she could adopt me, and then I'd have a mommy again." Lila had replied with 6-year-old logic that cut through all their adult complications. Victoria had looked across the table at Ethan, this man who had taught her that strength came from vulnerability, that success meant lifting others up, that the best investment she could ever make was in the people she loved. "What do you think?" she'd asked quietly. "Should we make it official?" His answer had been the smile that had been rebuilding her heart one day at a time for 8 months. The wedding was small, just the three of them, a judge, and a photographer who captured Lila's delighted giggles as she served as both flower girl and ring bearer. Victoria wore a simple white dress. Ethan wore the suit she'd given him for work. Lila wore a purple dress she'd chosen herself and a huge grin. They honeymooned in Central Park, picnicking on the great lawn while Lila chased butterflies and collected specimens for her growing nature collection. It was perfect. But the real transformation came when Victoria announced the launch of the Langston Family Foundation, a nonprofit supporting working parents and ensuring no child went without medical care due to financial constraints. The foundation's first initiative was a child care center in Victoria's flagship restaurant, available to all employees free of charge. The second was partnership with local hospitals, creating emergency medical funds for uninsured families. This is what success looks like, Victoria told reporters and business leaders at the foundation's launch. Not the size of your bank account or height of your building, but the number of people whose lives are better because you were here. She looked across the room at Ethan, holding Lila's hand while she proudly explained to anyone who would listen that her new mommy used to be scary but now helped people instead. I used to think caring about people was weakness, Victoria continued. I thought showing emotion meant showing vulnerability, and vulnerability meant giving someone power over you. I was wrong about all of it. The strongest person I know is a man who worked 4 jobs to buy his daughter's medication and never complained once. The most powerful moment I've experienced was watching a little girl love her father so completely it taught me what family really means. Real strength isn't protecting yourself from other people's needs. Real strength is making yourself strong enough to meet those needs. Real power isn't having control over others. Real power is empowering others to have control over their own lives. The speech made headlines, but Victoria didn't care about media coverage. She cared about phone calls from other companies wanting to start similar programs, from employees sharing their own stories, from parents who finally felt seen and supported. Most of all, she cared about the text she received that evening from her husband. Lila says you're the best mommy in the whole world. I think she might be right. 1 year later, Victoria stood on the rooftop garden she'd built atop their restaurant's corporate headquarters. Designed as play space for employees' children, it had become something more, a symbol of what happened when business success aligned with human values. Lila was running through the garden with 3 other children, her caste long gone and confidence fully restored. She'd started 2nd grade with plans to become either a veterinarian or businesswoman like her mommy, or maybe both, because she saw no reason why she couldn't help animals and people. Ethan was at the garden's far end, discussing expansion plans with their new head of operations, a former single mother who had started as a server and worked her way up with support of the company's education assistance program. Victoria watched them, these people who had become her world, and marveled at how completely her life had changed. A year ago, she'd been a woman who tested people's character through cruelty. Now she built gardens where children could play while their parents worked. A year ago, she'd measured worth by net worth. Now she measured it by Lila's laughter and Ethan's smile, and the number of families her foundation had helped. A year ago, she'd been successful but empty. Now she was rich in ways she'd never imagined possible. Mommy Victoria, Lila called from across the garden. Come see the butterfly I found. Victoria crossed the garden to admire a small orange butterfly that had landed on Lila's outstretched finger. It's beautiful, she said, crouching to Lila's level. Do you think it's lost? Lila asked, voice full of concern. I think it's exactly where it's supposed to be, Victoria replied, looking around at the garden, at the children playing, at Ethan walking toward them with that smile that still stopped her heart. Just like we are. As the sun set over Manhattan, Victoria held her daughter's hand and felt her husband's arms wrap around them both. She thought about the test that had started it all, a cruel experiment designed to reveal the worst in people that had instead revealed the best. She'd been wrong about so many things. Wrong about what made people strong, what made families real, what made life worth living. But she'd been right about one thing. Character was revealed in moments of crisis. She just hadn't expected the crisis to be her own heart cracking open wide enough to let love in. You know what moves me most about this story? It's not the dramatic moments or big gestures. It's the quiet truth that transformation doesn't happen all at once. It happens one choice at a time, one moment of courage at a time, one act of love at a time. Victoria thought she was testing Ethan, but really, life was testing her. Testing whether she was strong enough to choose vulnerability over control, connection over isolation, love over fear. And in the end, she passed the most important test of all. She learned that the greatest success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you give away. not by how high you build your walls, but by how wide you open your heart. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted and love always wins, I'd love to have you join our family here. We share stories like this every week. Stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, about second chances and new beginnings, about the beautiful truth that it's never too late to choose love. Thank you for taking this journey with us. Thank you for believing in happy endings and the power of good people to change the world, one heart at a time.